He stood in the pre-dawn darkness, breath freezing before it left his face, and ran his bare hand along the sled runner one last time. -71C made everything a gamble. The wood could splinter like glass. The rope could snap like dried sinew. The steel blade beneath the runner could crack from molecular stress alone. He had made this journey dozens of times, but never in cold this absolute. His wife emerged from the cabin with the wrapped bundle medicine for the Petrov family, 80 kilometers northeast. Their youngest had pneumonia. 3 days ago, the radio said help was coming. Yesterday, the radio said nothing. He loaded the bundle and tied it down with movements. He had performed 1,000 times. The dogs waited in their traces, vapor rising from their backs in the starlight. What breaks first out here was always the same question. Metal, wood, leather, rope, or the man who trusted them. His settlement sat in a valley where the taiga surrendered to tundra. 7 families clustered against the Siberian void. His wife had been awake since 4. Boiling water that froze in droplets before hitting the ground outside. She packed dried meat, tea leaves, and matches wrapped in oilcloth. Her movements were efficient, practiced. 40 years of this life had taught her what mattered. Their son checked the sled runners for the 3rd time, running his fingers along every joint and lashing. He was 32, born here, harder than his father in some ways, but less patient. The cold at this temperature was not wind or weather, it was physics turning hostile. Exposed metal bonded instantly to skin. Breath formed ice crystals that hung suspended. The air itself seemed to thicken, resisting movement. He had 6 dogs, all Siberian huskies mixed with something older, something that remembered wolves. They knew this cold. Their great-grandparents had known it. The sled was older than his son, built by his father in large, from Siberian large, and bound with techniques that predated Soviet maps. It had carried supplies, firewood, a wounded hunter, once even a small piano for the schoolteacher. Kilometers in this cold would take 8 hours, if nothing. Failed. Everything failed, eventually. He kissed his wife's forehead and checked the knife on his belt. The stars were still visible when he called the dogs forward. The first 20 kilometers passed in rhythm, the hiss of runners on snow. The dogs measured breathing, his own heartbeat steady in his chest. Then Yura, the lead dog, began favoring her right front paw, not limping exactly, just a hesitation every 4th or 5th stride. He stopped the team and knelt beside her. Her paw looked clean, no ice balls between the pads. But when he flexed it gently, she flinched. A strain, minor, probably at 71 degrees Celsius. Minor meant nothing. He checked the harness connections while he was down there. The leather at the brass rings had gone rigid, and one of the connectors showed a hairline crack in the metal itself. Cold did that. Made steel brittle. Made leather into something closer to wood. He redistributed Yura's load to the 2 dogs behind her and moved forward again. The sun was rising now, pale and offering nothing but light. 40 kilometers still ahead. By kilometer 40, the cold had found every weakness. The right sled runner developed a sound, not quite a crack, more like a complaint. He stopped to examine it and found a hairline fracture running 8 centimeters along the grain. Not critical yet, but growing. His left mitten had torn along the thumb seam, probably when he had adjusted Yura's harness. Cold air worked into the gap like a knife. He wrapped his hand in an extra cloth, but his fingers were already losing sensation. The scarf, Across his face had become a rigid mask of ice from his breath. When he tried to adjust it, frozen crystals scratched his cheek and drew blood that froze before it could drip. The dogs were tiring faster than they should. Even the strongest ones, Batu and Garrel, had their heads lower now. The cold pulled energy from muscle twice as fast as normal work. He calculated distances in his head. 40 kilometers covered. 40 to go. Medicine bundle still secure. Dogs still moving. But the fracture in the runner was widening with every kilometer of stress. He had two choices. The same two choices this land always offered. Push forward or turn back. Turn back meant the Petrov child would wait another day, maybe two. The radio silence suggested no one else was coming. Push forward meant trusting a cracking sled runner for 40 more kilometers in cold that made wood behave like pottery. He thought of his father, who had taught him that equipment could be replaced, but delays killed as surely as accidents. He called the dogs forward. The sun had reached its highest point, which at this latitude and season meant barely clearing the horizon. The temperature had not risen at all. At kilometer 60, the runner split completely. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent, sharp, final, unmistakable. The sled lurched sideways and dragged to a halt. The dogs stumbled in their traces, then stood panting, vapor rising from their bodies in columns. He knelt beside the runner and assessed the damage with hands already clumsy from cold. A 20-centimeter split, clean through the larch. The steel blade beneath had torqued and separated from the wood. The entire right side of the sled was compromised. Evening was 2 hours away. Temperature would drop another 5 degrees, maybe 10, no shelter, no trees, just open tundra and a sky already deepening to violet at the edges. His fingers were wooden, stumps as he pulled rope from the supply pack. He needed to splint the runner, bind it tight enough to hold his weight and the medicine for 20 more kilometers. But rope at 71 degrees Celsius behaved like frozen wire. His knife came out, hands shaking now. He cut lengths and tried to work them around the split wood. The cold was inside his gloves, inside his boots, working into the core of him. One dog whined. The others had lowered themselves to the snow, conserving heat. He forced his mind to slow, to remember his father's hands demonstrating this exact repair on a winter night decades ago. Wrap the split. Use the blade as a brace. Tie off with double knots pulled tight enough to crack teeth. His left hand had no feeling at all. He pulled the final knot with his teeth and right hand together, tasting blood from split lips. The repair looked crude, uneven, probably inadequate, but the rope and his father's memory proved stronger than physics wanted to allow. The dogs found something beyond exhaustion, some reserve that animals kept for moments when stopping meant not starting again. Ura limped on 3 legs, but stayed in position. Batu and Garrel pulled like they were half there. Age. He saw the lights of the Petrov settlement 17 minutes before full dark. Yellow squares of window glow that meant warmth and survival and the end of gambling. Mikhail Petrov met him at the door, eyes widening at the state of the sled, at the ice coating his face, at the way he moved like a man twice his age. The medicine changed hands. The child was still breathing, still fighting. Now she had a chance. They offered him the guest room, tea, food, shelter until morning. He accepted without words, hands still useless, feet wooden in his boots. That night, lying under borrowed blankets, he catalogued what had broken: the sled runner, the harness connector, his mitten, 3 layers of skin on his cheek. What had held? The rope. The dogs. The reason for going in the morning. He would face 80 kilometers, back with a crippled sled and exhausted dogs. But the Petrov child would wake to medicine.